Prime Minister Modi has called on the nation to abandon single-use plastic in less than a month. Speaking at an event in Mathura in Uttar Pradesh, the Prime Minister made an appeal to make this a reality by the 2nd of October, the 150th birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi. Now, the Prime Minister's call for efforts to rid our homes and workplaces of single-use plastic. He's called on self-help groups, civil society, individuals and others to join the mission. We must point out that the Prime Minister himself has not used the word ban so far, but the nodal minister has said so unequivocally. Just 2 days back, Food and Consumer Affairs Minister Ram Vilas Paswan has asked manufacturers to come up with alternatives, arguing for a blanket ban. Paswan said, and I quote, "Recycling is an alternative but not a permanent solution. Permanent solution is that plastic should be replaced and there should be a ban." So he has used the word ban very clearly, end of quote. Now, this leaves us with many questions. What constitutes single-use plastic? Is a nationwide ban necessary, warranted? What is the real problem, plastic or the lack of proper disposal and recycling mechanism? And what could be the impact of a nationwide ban on single-use plastic? Before we discuss all of that and more, here's the Prime Minister speaking in Mathura today.
हमें ये कोशिश करनी है कि इस वर्ष 2 अक्टूबर तक अपने घरों को, अपने दफ्तरों को, अपने कार्यक्षेत्रों को सिंगल यूज प्लास्टिक से मुक्त करें। हर संगठन से इस अभियान से जुड़ने के लिए हृदयपूर्वक बहुत आग्रह करता हूं।
Well, that's the Prime Minister speaking in Mathura today. So what qualifies as single-use plastic? Bags, straws, stirrers, soda and water bottles, food packets and several other daily use products are made out of single-use plastic. It's also used in disposable syringes, solar panels and several other products and industries. Now, ironically, since the 1970s, the use of plastic was promoted as a measure to protect the environment as it stopped the large-scale culling of trees and it was cost-effective. But the problem with plastic that we face today is that it is not biodegradable and it is difficult to recycle. It contaminates soil and water and animals end up consuming it. It enters the food chain. Now, the real problem lies with recycling. According to a 2018 study by the United Nations, only 9% of the plastic across the world is recycled. A whopping 79% were left in landfills, oceans and littered across India. But India seems to be on the right track. If you take a look at a Morgan Stanley report, 60% of plastic currently used in India is recycled. This is almost on par with Germany and twice the recycling rate in the US. This is data according to Morgan Stanley. Now, with this talk for a blanket ban gathering steam, the Plastic Manufacturers Association in India has raised the red flag. They warn that 10,000 companies could get hit and fear that 4 lakh jobs could be at risk. Priya joins us now with more details. Priya, what is the industry view?
Well, you know, with the kind of government's plan to impose a ban on single-use plastic, it could have wide-ranging economic implications. Virtually every industry, right from the FMCG space to the paper industry, as well as plastic manufacturers, could be impacted if this ban comes into play. And that's the reason that the All India Plastic Manufacturers Association has made its representation to the government. Estimates indicate that about 7,000 to 10,000 units could be impacted if at all this ban is implemented, and that could result in 3 to 4 lakh workers really losing their jobs as a result of this. Now, about 4 to 7% is the kind of raw material that goes into the manufacturing process, and that could go out of the system if at all this ban comes into effect. Now, what we do understand is that the industry is suggesting that there needs to be a scientific definition as far as single-use plastic is concerned, specifically with relation to the Indian context, which means that there is a suggestion that there needs to be a committee that is formed of experts, of institutions, of industry insiders to have a view on what really single-use plastic should be defined as. And what the industry is also saying that it's not the single-use plastic that should be banned, but the single-use packaging as a whole. So that concept really needs to be taken into account. Now, if the ban is implemented, then, you know, the government should provide special assistance to policy affected or impacted units, as they're called. And if the policy, really takes into account the life cycle, the economic environment, as well as the social impact of this, then they should also consider the impact that alternatives have as far as the overall plastic ban goes. So what we really need to wait and watch at this point in time is what the government really comes out as the list with the items, which will fall under this category, and what really the implications will be as far as the overall industry is concerned. That's a space that we will continue to track.
Well, Priya, many thanks for joining us. Yes, several unanswered questions there. Joining us now to make sense of this is the Managing Director of Ava Natural Mineral Water, Behram Mehta, Jayesh Rambia, the Co-Chairman of the Environment Committee at the All India Plastics Manufacturers Association, and Sachin Sharma, the Founder Director of Gem Enviro Management and Recycling Company. Gentlemen, appreciate you joining us here on the program. Jayesh Rambia, let me start by asking you, you heard what the Prime Minister had to say this morning. He did not use the word ban. We also heard what Ramvilas Paswan, the Consumer Affairs Minister, is quoted to have said 2 days ago, where he very clearly says that there needs to be a ban on the use of single-use plastic. Now, have you had any conversation, any dialogue with the government on what this will entail? What are we expecting to happen on the 2nd of October, and what will the implications be?
We have tried to approach government at all levels, and we are getting mixed signals from wherever we approach. Right now, I think the decision has already been made, but the single-use plastic definition is not yet in place. The rules are not yet formed, but the whole industry has come under pressure. Now, as an industry, we look at our leaders to give us aspiration for growth so that we can meet the expanding need of this consumers, and also we can create employment for our largest workforce in the world. Instead here, because of some myths around plastic, because of our mismanagement of plastic waste, because of littering habits of consumers, which nobody is addressing, the whole industry has come under pressure for no fault of plastic processor.
Okay.
India
okay.
is
Jayesh, you said that you've tried to approach. I'll just come to you in a second. You're saying that you've tried to approach the government, but you're getting mixed signals. But you also said that a decision has been made. What is the decision? Is the decision to ban single-use plastic nationwide altogether come the 2nd of October? Is that your understanding?
No, our understanding is the Prime Minister on his speech on Independence Day rightly said that he wants to make India free of plastic pollution. Plastic वेस्टेज से मुक्ति दिलानी है, नॉट प्लास्टिक से मुक्ति दिलानी है. बट आई थिंक somewhere the whole thing got lost into translation, and वो बाहर आ रहा है, we want to make India plastic free at some lower levels, which I don't think any growing economy can afford to do. India is per capita consumption is only 12 kg of plastic per head per year against more than 109 kgs for US. India is recycling 60% plastic compared to 30% in Europe and US. So we are doing pretty well. The only thing we need to control is littering. We need to start waste segregation at source, and we must ensure that municipalities do that waste management job properly. Industry can recycle if the waste come back to industry. It is resource, it's not a waste. So this actually can create more jobs.
Okay, you've put some data on the table, and you're right that India does recycle 60% of its plastic waste. But let me bring Behram Mehta into the conversation. Behram, we don't know what the decision is going to be. The Consumer Affairs Minister is speaking of a ban. The Prime Minister is making an appeal to not use single-use plastic in homes, offices, and so on and so forth. Do you have any further clarity on what is likely to be implemented? Is it a nationwide ban? Have you had any dialogue or discussion with the government as part of your industry? And secondly, what is the understanding of what will come under this category of single-use plastic?
I have had a clear bird's eye view of the whole process. The Prime Minister was very, very clear that he said single-use plastic in a very clear and distinct fashion. And day before yesterday, Consumer Affairs Minister, Mr. Ram Vilas Paswan, called industry, government, and all the people's meeting there at Krishi Bhavan.
Yeah.
And he took the view of the people. He has not said that there will be any blanket ban or anything like that. He took the view of the people,
Okay.
what are the likely chances of replacing some single-use plastics. And we made a point there, all of us together, industry secretaries and government officials as well as technocrats, all the industries, we made a very clear point that in India there is a very fantastic ecosystem of rag pickers, kabadiwalas, recyclers, which has achieved in PET plastic, because that is my industry, so I am more clear in that. We have achieved a fantastic recycling rate of 92%, which is a world record. And this is due to the very unique ecosystem of India of the rag pickers, kabadiwalas, waste collectors, and then the recyclers. So, in fact, today what has happened is that we have a world record in recycling. India is the first in recycling because of this unique system. The Honorable Prime Minister has very clearly said it is going to be single-use plastic, which will include things like forks, straws, then cutlery, thin bags below 50 micron, and all those items. There is no blanket ban being discussed, and the list of single-use plastics is being made, and it is being made by the top-level team of Cabinet Secretary plus all the secretaries who will be involved, like Environment Secretary, Bureau of Indian Standards, and everybody is clear that it is going to be done in such a way that the Indian economy is not devastated or hurt in any way. They are going to take care that there are millions and millions of small businesses dependent.
Sure. I want to get some clarifications from you, because as you mentioned, you were part of this meeting that the Consumer Affairs Minister had with all stakeholders and government officials. Now, you say that the minister said there was not going to be a blanket ban. He was quoted as saying otherwise. You're also saying that single-use plastic items like forks, straws, cutlery, bags below 50 microns are likely to be in the list that will constitute as single-use plastic. So what happens to forks, straws, bags below 50 microns? Do these get banned come the 2nd of October? And will that be nationwide?
I'll give you clarity. As yet, they have not declared anything of a total ban in any way. They are interacting with industry and all the stakeholders, and they are getting a feel and making, the Cabinet Secretary is leading a committee which will decide which is single-use plastics, and it will be done in a very phased and a systematic manner, for the simple reason that India, SSIs and MSMEs are driving the economy. Right now, economy cannot afford to lose jobs also, and it's like this, money saved is money earned. A job saved is a job created. So I do not believe there will be any blanket ban or anything like that, because the government is very clear that we don't want to do anything that will hurt the economy and the people.
Mr. Mehta, is that your belief, or is that an unequivocal assurance given by the government to you in that meeting?
No, the whole way the meeting was conducted was in an interactive, nice way. There was no blanket instructions as such. In fact, they were saying, what are the alternatives? Let's discuss that. Everything was discussed. Like we talked about our water industry, beverage industry, and it was discussed what can replace PET. So we talked about steel, we talked about glass, and everything was far more expensive and with a far more bigger carbon footprint. In fact, the meeting concluded that the PET plastic is a good plastic. It is 92% recycled. There are millions of people dependent on it. 71 lakh people are indirectly and directly involved in it. There are millions of people who are dependent on it. So I do not believe that the government will do anything to endanger that.
Okay, so that is your belief,
But
and you believe that the meeting ended. There was, sure. That is an important clarification, Mr. Mehta. Thanks very much for sharing that with us. Mr. Mehta was part of that meeting that took place with the Consumer Affairs Minister, saying that there was no...
in fact...
Yes, yeah.
No.
Yes, sir,
nothing
go ahead.
like that. They said, you give us suggestions in 3 days.
All right.
So we are giving suggestions even now as we talk.
I'll come back to you on the suggestions, sir. But let me bring in Sachin Sharma into this. I'll come back to you. I'll just come back to you. I'll come back to you on the replacement alternatives in just a second, but let me get Sachin Sharma into the conversation. Sachin, what you've heard there from Behram Mehta on the roadmap that the government is trying to put together, he's suggesting that the government does not want to go in for a nationwide ban of single-use plastic. But what more can be done to ensure that we continue to build on the recycling momentum? And we clearly have done well on that front. What more can be done to educate and create more awareness in the consumer when it comes to waste segregation, recycling, etc.?
Yeah. See, in terms of the waste, particularly the plastic packaging waste in India,
go ahead, Sachin.
The 94% of the plastic packaging in India is,
Yes, please continue.
Yeah. So, 94% of the plastic packaging in India is already recyclable. This is as per the CPCB study which was done, and also the recycling rates of the total plastic packaging is about 60%. In certain items like the PET, it is like as high as like say 80-90%. Now the in order to increase the recycling rates for the other plastic packaging, we need to ensure that they need to have some kind of economic value. Now, if you see, the PET has got economic value, and therefore it is getting picked up. The collection rates are high and the recycling rates are high. But in case of the items like the multi-layered packaging, there is hardly an economic value, and therefore it is not picked up by the waste pickers or the informal sector, which is engaged in the collection part. Now, the important part here is that the companies and the stakeholders, they need to focus on making this plastic packaging some kind of by increasing their size or by increasing the value, so that it gets picked up. Because the municipalities and the ULBs are already working on the waste collection, but the actual work which is happening is done by the rack pickers itself. So, in order to, it's very important that we need to, incentivize them or monetize them in order to address this issue.
Right. Okay, so multi-layered packaging, the incentives need to be provided to ensure that that is recycled as well. But Jayesh Rambhia, let me go back to you. And you just heard there from Behram Mehta, you were seeking clarification, and Mr. Mehta has shared what went on at that meeting that took place 2 days ago in the capital between industry and government. Does that give you a little more comfort? And what can we now look at in terms of alternatives? Because as Mr. Mehta pointed out, the government has sought industry's feedback on replacement, on alternatives. So what could we see from industry now by way of alternatives?
Please understand, this problem started around 2018 when UNEP came out with Beat the Plastic Pollution Program. And it's been a journey for about one and a half year that we have been facing these issues. What we have been requesting government is, as per UNEP guidelines, they have given 10 steps for policymakers to follow to make sure that the changeover is smoother for industry, for economy, and for consumers. However, most of the state governments have overlooked those 10 steps, and they are jumping straight to conclusion very fast. As part of those 10 steps, one was to work on alternatives. And when you work out alternatives, you also need to consider what is environmental impact, social impact, and economical impact of alternatives. Today, you are replacing plastic with paper mug, thinking that you are doing good work. But 3 years down the line or 5 years down the line, you will suddenly see the remaining tree cover. Right now, we are having just 28 trees per head per Indian, which is lowest in the world. It can go down further if we start using more and more packaging. In Europe, they got just one rule. They don't have separate rule for plastic, paper, metal or glass. They have one rule for packaging, entire packaging. And what they say is when rag picker or any waste collector makes an effort, they pick up all the waste together, they segregate all the waste, and then they reuse all the waste. This is our national wealth. Right now, we are just letting it rot and make this beautiful country not so good looking. But if we start recycling properly, there is not a problem. And one way to recycle, there are two-pronged approach we have adopted. One is we are working with IIT Bombay, Industrial Design Center, to make small devices for rag pickers so that their pickup capability multiplies. Like small vacuum-based pickup system, which can increase their capacity to pick up those small sachet, etc. And second thing, we are asking government to make end-of-use life possible, promote end-of-life use for plastic waste, which is like using plastic in making of roads. Already more than 100,000 kilometers of roads in India are made by using of waste plastic. Now, if government mandates it, there is not enough waste in India to fulfill that demand. And that will shoot up the price for waste plastic and it will solve the problem. There's another burning plastic in cement kiln for energy. What we are requesting is the cement companies should give calorific value for the waste plastic as much as they're paying for the coal and be fair because that will solve the problem. And all the other countries are taking enough long time. They are promising some action, but some reduction in usage by 2030. India is in very fast hurry to lead the world. But please remember, the problem is last time that we were using coolers on railway platforms, the WHO found out that they were the source of spreading of tuberculosis. Now, we don't want such public health scare. So we need to plastic disposables for a solution. The only thing is what we want is they should be allowed to be used in enclosed environment. So littering is not possible, like in airline, in quick service restaurants. But so let's fight littering, let's fight improve waste segregation. All those things will improve our economy. This is not needed.
That has to be part of the plan. Sure, that has to be part of the plan. Mr. Mehta, let me come back to you now. Was there any discussion with the government on a transition plan and also viable alternatives? As you yourself mentioned, that doing away with the PET bottle and going in for steel or glass is economically not viable. So what is the roadmap and what is the transition plan that the government is looking at? Because Jayesh Rambia's concern is that there isn't a transition plan and that the government is overlooking these 10 steps that should be also factored in and catered to before going to the ban route.
Okay, I am very clear about 2 to 3 things. First is that Honorable Prime Minister said only single-use plastic. Second is there was no blanket ban on anything, but like my learned friend said, down the line, some people have misunderstood the Prime Minister's words, and there have been knee-jerk reactions across the nation for which a clarification is due from the government, so that the government should tell the officials below and the states that don't jump the gun and don't do knee-jerk reactions and don't disrupt the current systems. Secondly, not only is glass and steel and all the alternatives not viable economically, it is having a huge carbon footprint. To make a bottle of water, if you have PET, you take 100 degrees, and in glass, you take 1600 degrees. So actually, financially, environmentally, and every way, PET is the answer. And since India has this beautiful recycling system, maybe we have the right mantra, and banning it would be detrimental to our country. So I am very, very clear about one thing, and that is that India has got the solution right, especially for PET, which is this, And as soon as the single-use list comes out, things will be much more clear, and it will be in a phased manner. It will not be abrupt or
Mr. Mehta,
in any way.
Yeah, Mr. Mehta, you keep talking about this list coming out. So was there any indication of whatever comes under this single-use plastic list that the government is putting together? What is the plan? Will this list, as I'm asking you repeatedly, whatever comes under that list, will that then be banned? Will there be a timeline for when this will be banned, or will it be immediate? What is the indication?
I believe everything will be in a systematic phased manner. I do not think there will be anything blanket. The list is being finalized by a very learned committee headed by the Cabinet Secretary with the Environment Secretary and lots of sane and very, very intelligent people. So there will be a good list. I believe it will be good for, it will be a fair list. Then it will, I don't think it will be more like a phased in manner, like even in Maharashtra, when on 23rd March 2018 there was a ban imposed, blanket ban, then they realized that PET is fully recyclable, so they on 11th April they removed it. Same way it will be done in a scientific manner. I do not think that there will be any sudden reaction which will hurt the industry, because our economy, our SSI, small units, MSMEs and all will be devastated. I don't think the government, the finance department or the economic department or anybody will, advise this. And I believe the government is sensitive right now to the economy, to the employment and to the people at large, and there will be no knee-jerk reaction.
Okay, that is your hope, that there will be no knee-jerk reaction, and that is Jayesh Rambia's hope as well, that the government will take into cognizance the impact that this could have across the supply chain, across the value chain of people operating in this business, that there needs to be more thought given into what constitutes single-use.
I'll tell you.
Yes.
No, I want to be clear. On 2nd October, Prime Minister will come out with a plan on Gandhiji's birthday. I am very clear. He will come out with a plan on Gandhiji's birthday of how to go about this. But it will be done in a sensitive manner. It will not be insensitively done, first. Secondly, it will be done in such a way that the economy, employment, industry, people at large, incomes and everything will be taken into account. India cannot afford to have a further slowdown. So, and plastic employs 71 lakh people in India. And 7 crore people are touched with the plastic industry and its affiliates. So I do not believe that government will do anything which will hurt us. I do not believe that.
Well, okay, sir. Well, we will see what the Prime Minister unveils come the 2nd of October. We're out of time, Mr. Mehta. We will have to see what the government unveils come the 2nd of October. But as you pointed out, your belief and your hope, more importantly, is that the government will put together a transition plan and that the government will be mindful of the impact of any possible ban across the supply and the value chain. 71 lakh people directly impacted or part of this plastics industry in India. And the hope across industry is that there should not be a knee-jerk reaction. There shouldn't be a blanket ban. There should be more that is done to encourage recycling.
I want to say something more.
In India, not doing badly on that. So we're out of time. Mr. Mehta, we're completely out of time, but we appreciate you joining us here. Jayesh Rambia and Sachin Sharma, many thanks for joining us here on CNBC TV18. We're going to take a break. There's a lot more coming up. Don't go anywhere.